Welcome, everybody, to another edition of a show that we call The Family Guys. My name is Toogie, joined by the one and the only Sin for the Win and Sin. Today, we are talking about Season 1, Episode 3 of Family Guy, entitled Chitty Chitty Death Bang. But before we get to that, my friend, how are you?
Yeah, doing pretty good again. Enjoying going back and watching all these. And this one, like overall rating rise, I have it rated higher than the previous episode, but still lower than the pilot just because the pilot is just so iconic in so many ways, which is quite rare because some shows pilots are just like meh.
You know, I was thinking about the whole how we're rating episodes thing, and in my head, I think I was going to kind of move forward with an out of 5, right? Where,
Yeah.
you know, a 0 is a disaster. I don't know if we'll even get any of those. I don't know if there's a disastrous episode of Family Guy that is just so horrific. Not that I recall, at least. I guess it depends on how far into this venture we get. Maybe we'll find one. But, you know, I'd call a 3 is like your average solid episode. A 4 is a really good one. 5 is a classic.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that episode 1's a 5. That's a classic.
Yeah.
Episode 2, 3, maybe a 4?
I would say, episode 2 is a 3 for me, and then probably this one's a 4.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I am intrigued at how long it takes us, just because nostalgia is going to carry us a long way, but also the quality of these episodes early on were tremendous. Like, I wonder how long it's going to take until we have our first 2. Like
it's not like how long it takes to get back to a 5 out of 5. Like, I can remember some that really stand out to me, that which in my mind are like 5 out of 5s that I can't wait to get to. And you know, it's pretty good. They last like throughout, like they really nail it with just the growth of the show and how much like the characters evolve and things like that, and how much like the stories really hit home and things. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I think, you know, overall, like, this is our second recording session, right? Like, we recorded the first 2 episodes back to back. And now, you know, I think in a way, like, number one, it was just because of the schedule and the timing that we had. But at the same time, I think it's going to be beneficial for us to be like, okay, cool. Now we're coming back to record episode 3. How do we feel about having watched the episode? How do we feel about talking about it? And I'm still just as pumped and just as jazzed for this.
Yeah,
so
it's fantastic.
And it is a fun episode to talk about, certainly. And I think for the most part, we'll be able to just kind of jump right into it today. I don't think there's anything too crazy to mention or to talk about in terms of the build up for it or any kind of fun facts like we had the first time out. So
yeah, I got those scattered throughout of little things, that little references, background references that I've noticed are other little fun facts, because I'm a nerd like that, and I find out all the weird extraneous details about things.
There you go. Well, then, with that said, let's get into it. Why not? We won't waste any time this time out. Although before getting to the hit by hit from the episode, wanted to mention I had looked up again. I'm always intrigued at who wrote and directed each episode. And this particular episode directed by Dominic Paulsino, who has quite the resume. And that's what I'm always intrigued by, is how many people have been on part of this show for a long time, and also what other experiences do they have. And Dom Paulsino has directed episodes of The Simpsons, King of the Hill, Rick and Morty. And the writer of this was Danny Smith, who was a longtime writer for the show. Also wrote for other sitcoms, Nurses, which I've never seen. I don't think I've ever even heard of Nurses.
Me neither.
Have you?
I have no idea what that is. I know all the rest of them, but I never got into any of the other shows. But Nurses, I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming from the 80s, because I'm not around.
I did look it up. It aired from September of 91 to May of 94.
Wow. Huh.
3 seasons worth that aired on NBC. And this is my favorite line of it. Created and produced by Susan Harris as a spin-off of Empty Nest, which itself was a spin-off of The Golden Girls.
Oh my God.
So I hadn't heard of Empty Nest either. I didn't know there was a spin-off of the Golden Girls, but apparently there was.
Interesting. I never knew that. I know Golden Girls because who doesn't? I never knew it had spin-offs.
Right. Yeah, no, that was a weird one for me. And then I had also wrote episodes for Third Rock from the Sun, which I have heard of and I recall being a show. Mm-hmm. I never watched an episode. I couldn't tell you a damn thing about the show or the premise.
All I know is French Stewart is in it. That's the biggest thing that I know about that show. Yeah, it was. I remember like seeing commercials and promos for it and stuff because I was growing up and watching TV around that time. But that's it. I never watched it.
The show is about 4 extraterrestrials who are on an expedition to Earth.
What the fuck?
Which they consider to be a very insignificant planet. They pose as a human family to observe the behavior of human beings.
Huh, okay. I never even knew they're aliens. See, I don't even know the premise of the show. Oh my god.
Starring John Lithgow, French Stewart, a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt before he was totally not Robin in in a certain Batman film.
You should use that name more. Robin. What the fuck?
Okay, complete side tangent here. Is it just me or did that third Dark Knight film suck?
I liked it. I thought that was so forced. That reference to Robin and like, oh, he's going to be Robin now. It was just, yeah, that was a little forced. I liked the movie. I laugh at Bane, just the way he talks. Mm-hmm. And I'll always remember the frickin' when I used to watch CinemaSins, when he says, Gotham is yours. And he's just, the sin is, Bane does an Adam Sandler impression. Ding. It's, yeah, I mean, I liked it. It's not the strongest of that trilogy for sure, but I think it's still good.
Maybe I should have said sucks in comparison to the other two, because I feel like the other two knocked it out of the park. Like, obviously, The Dark Knight initially gets praised consistently to the point where some people are just like, okay, just I get it. But I also thought Batman Begins was really, really strong. Maybe it's just because of the memes surrounding Dark Knight Rises that I'm just like, In fairness, I haven't watched it in a while though. Maybe I should go back. But then again, I also you and I took a trip to Finland this past June. Mm-hmm. And that was finally the time on that flight over that I watched the most recent Batman film.
I actually watched that on one of the flights too. So it's kind of funny. We both had the same experience watching The Batman. I thought that was a great movie.
I thought it was really, really good too. Yeah. And it's 3 hours long. So what better time to watch it than a transatlantic flight?
Yes.
Wow. Anyway, yeah, never watched Third Rock from the Sun.
I think it's, the more we get like turned on to like weird sidetracks and tangents, the more we just embrace the culture of Family Guy and all the references and all the cutaway gags and stuff.
Well, speaking of which, Danny Smith also wrote episodes of Yes, Dear.
Thing I haven't seen anything of.
Yeah, I mean, aired from October of 2000 to February of 06, 6 seasons, over 100 episodes. I have no recollection of this show whatsoever either. And also has credits for a show called Head of the Class, which, I mean, that, in fairness, that's the oldest one of the bunch, from 86 to 91, which again, I feel like I've heard of it before, but there you go. Never checked it out. And I bring all of these up to say, if these are shows that you recall or have fond memories of and think, yeah, those are worth watching, let us know. I want to know. Like, should I check these shows out? Are they good examples of good shows, good sitcoms from the past?
I would like to bring up that Danny Smith, I believe this is the right person. He's like one of the older dudes, which makes sense given his resume. He had him, as I was watching one of the commentaries, he was one of maybe the only person who worked for Family Guy that never really got into or saw Star Wars. which I found crazy because he was actually alive during the time when the original trilogy hit theaters. He has a story that he told on one of the commentaries. I believe it's one of the Star Wars episode commentaries where he went to see the original Star Wars movie and just got shit-faced in the theater and doesn't remember anything. And that was his only Star Wars experience in his life. To which, of course, everyone makes fun of him for. But yeah, I find that was interesting because we get one of our first Star Wars references in this episode as well. And I thought that was kind of ironic that it's Danny Smith directing it with that history.
I wonder if it was his joke or if someone's like, Danny, put this
Yeah,
in.
It's probably not even his joke. He's like, what the hell is this?
Well, he mentioned, in details of the episode, and one detail that you and I both noticed was that this is the only season 1 episode without a cold open.
Mm-hmm.
Which, it was almost so jarring compared to the first 2 episodes that even I noticed it out of the gates. It's just like, oh, it's the Griffin home. Okay. And I mean, I talked about it. The season or the episode 2 cold open for me, I'm just like, eh. So, I wasn't opposed to not seeing one essentially, but just an interesting little tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
This episode begins as Stewie is about to turn 1.
And then he never ages ever again.
Never, ever again. It's the... God, what's the running joke at this point that Bart Simpson's almost 50?
Yeah. Weird sidetrack fact, because we mentioned King of the Hill. I don't even know if I mentioned this so far, but King of the Hill at one point was going to age the characters. I believe that again, another thing I picked up on one of the commentaries here is like that they were talking about King of the Hill and how they were initially going to age the characters, but then they never ended up doing it because it'd just be too weird and hard. And it doesn't necessarily work for cartoons, like aging characters, because like you can evolve like a character, but it's hard to also evolve them through their aging process and things like that. So like we'll see obviously like cutaway gags of like and plot points of like older Griffins and things like that, but yeah, it's hard to age people in cartoons because the whole premise is like when you're introduced to the character, if you fell in love with that, it's going to be hard to watch them like grow up in a cartoon.
I mean, you mentioned, you just said all grown up and stuff like that. Like that's what I think of is the Rugrats, because that's what they did. They did a Rugrats like follow up. Instead of it being the babies, they did it to where like, oh, they're in middle school now.
Weird.
Like I remember that being on Nickelodeon in like 2003-ish, 4-ish, I think is when it started. It was a bit weird, but also it was nice that you could treat it as its own thing, right? If it was just too weird for it, it's like, okay, well, the initial episodes are still there and you're fine. But that's what I found interesting is that some, properties have done that. But it is funny that you mentioned King of the Hill specifically because I saw something, I think on Twitter, within the past week.
Oh yeah, is this Bobby dressed up as the fucking like furry femboy or whatever?
Yes. You got graying out Hank, who's starting to look more like Cotton, and then you get Bobby as just this fabulous individual. And someone's just like, "Oh, this is what King of the Hill would be now, and the way the world is."
Yeah.
And the top
but Hank put a stop to it. I'm like, dude, did you miss what their dynamic is in that show? Like, what the fuck?
And you know what? I'd be up for it. I'd be up for it if that was the way that the show would be. I'd be very intrigued. And obviously, I think, or maybe not obviously, but there was the talk that King of the Hill was coming back because Hulu picked it up at the beginning of last year. But I haven't heard anything about it for a while. Especially in the aftermath of Johnny Hardwick.
Mike Judge. Beavis and Butthead coming back. I just said go Mike Judge. Beavis and Butthead had like a reboot, didn't it? And then like King of the Hill might.
But yeah, with Johnny Hardwick passing away, who was the voice of Dale Gribble, this past summer, it's like I don't know what they might have had recorded. And obviously, I mean that's a major change. Like you're bringing back a show, and you're talking about, like, I can't even really think of a comparison. It'd be like the voice of Bender passing away when they're looking to bring back Futurama or something like that. Yeah. It's like, how the fuck do you navigate that? It changes the entire dynamic of the show.
Pocket sand.
One of my favorite.
Like, he's iconic. Like, it's just an iconic character. That's tough.
One of my favorite dynamics ever on a show is his complete lack of awareness in regards to Joseph being John Redcord's son.
Yeah, that is great. The fact and I love the irony that he's just such a fucking conspiracy theorist, and he doesn't notice his wife's cheating on him with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so amazing.
Coming soon to a podcast feed near you, King of the Hills. Kings of the Hill.
Kings of the Hill. Oh. So,
Stewie's about to turn 1. We flash back to his birth and Peter throwing up and running out of the room. As Stewie's delivered, the doctors find more. Lois questions if it's twins, but no, it's a map of Europe. Stewie planning to bomb London, Paris, Germany, and Austria.
Man.
God, you talk about the evolution of Stewie, despite the fact he stays 1 year old. Just at this early stage, you have, like, episode 1 was very much like, I'm going to kill Lois. But then it also drifted into, I'm going to take over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of went back and forth between the two up until the point where it transitions into he and Brian basically have their own stoner comedies within, the context of each episode. But yeah, just the idea of, again, 3rd episode of this, and they're just like, yeah, what if we joke that this baby wants to bomb Europe? I respect it. I respect it.
Yeah, the whole evil genius thing is fantastic. But yeah, you realize you can only go so far with that. And it is still referenced at time in later episodes. But yeah, they found the evolution, which was Stewie becoming essentially a very effeminate, possibly closeted gay baby. Which is goddamn hilarious in itself.
The plan for his birthday party is at Cheesie Charlie's, which is a not so subtle reference, obviously, to a certain place. Did you ever have a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese?
I don't know if I did, but I've been to them 100%.
Fun fact, my first birthday was at a Chuck E. Cheese.
Wow.
Obviously, no recollection, but I heard people had a great time.
For some reason, I remember the pizza being good, but I cannot imagine it's any fucking good. I think I was just a kid and it was pizza. Like, it can't be good. It can't be good there. Like,
I feel like the pizza is the equivalent of the new design for Chuck. It's just like, it probably doesn't sit right,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but that just ruined the idea for me of like, hey, go to Chuck E. Cheese. It's like, have you seen what that new freaking rat looks like? He's not even a mouse anymore. He's a rat. I don't like him.
Let me see. I have to actually look this up right now.
Give me the 90s.
Ew.
Yeah, see? Like, what happened? That's what I'm saying. What happened to Chuck E. Cheese?
I got one of them standing next to each other. Yeah, the old one just looks fucking dejected. He's like wearing jeans now instead of... What the hell? That's weird. Yelling at clouds right now.
Basically, yeah. So, Chuck E. Cheese is, or Cheesy Charlie's, should I say, is the plan for the birthday. Chris is excited because they have the game where you put $1 in and win 4 quarters back, and you win every time.
And thus, we go further down the road of Chris just being an absolute idiot like his father.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking too. Is like, this was the first joke for me where I'm just like, oh, Chris is little Peter, basically.
Yeah.
We get a flashback to Meg's first birthday party, where she says her first words, her first steps, and performs her first drum solo while Lois is slaving away in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's real right there. Like, moms at birthday parties, like I remember my mom talking about it, like, yeah, she's like, you miss so much, because my mom would go freaking all out. Like, we'd have themed birthday parties. She would like hand draw big ass things on. Like I remember my sister had a Disney parlor. My mom legit like hand drew, maybe used tracings, but like these huge ass posters to put all over the house of all the Disney princesses, like Little Mermaid, Jasmine, all this stuff. It was wild. And
That's crazy.
I remember her talking about it. She's like, yeah, you do all this work and then you barely get to enjoy it after doing all that work. So that's very real.
Stewie, as he walks into the living room and needs to be changed, is informed of these big plans for him, and he begins to panic and wonder what they could be planning. Meanwhile, Meg runs home after failing at cheering.
I just know what this is leading to.
How'd you do? I sucked. It sucked, Peter. Yay! So stupid. But it leads to a flashback of Peter struggling to fit in as he gets the steps wrong in his West Side Story.
He was just there for the gang fights, man.
Oh God. It's this, and they had a really kind of similar joke because the character says to Peter, it's step, kick, step, curl. But then I confused this with the time that Chris and Peter were dancing to appease the volcano.
Yeah.
Where it's step, hit, step, pivot. Like you're trying to piss off the volcano.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I always confuse those two, but they both make me laugh regardless. Peter ends up telling Meg, to be happy, you should just be the girl that everyone thinks you should be. Don't be yourself.
Yeah.
Just do what you got to do to fit in. Great lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, will it work out?
High school.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
It brings us back, though, to another flashback where the Hanson bus breaks down in front of the Griffin home, and Peter thinks it's the Children of the Corn and unloads
two references that people now will not understand, but were goddamn funny at the time. Did you ever see a Children of the Corn movie?
Yes, I saw the first one.
I can't remember which one I saw. All I remember is a scene where this dude goes into a church with a voodoo doll and makes this patron there fucking bleed out of his ears and his nose all crazy. That's like the only thing I remember from Children of the Corn. And them slashing their hands and becoming blood brothers.
All I remember
that was
is just how freaking creepy the primary kid Isaac was in the first place. That was just good casting. I don't have a joke about it or anything like that. That was just good casting. But they've tried to reboot Children of the Corn a few times in terms of like making it a thing, and it just never really took off. But that's one of those things where I feel like in the 80s especially, so many of the initial versions of the films hit so hard where it's like, how do you possibly, top that? Because equaling it isn't enough. It's like, yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was, shout out to Children of the Corn. It's a good movie. Maybe not the most recent ones, but, Peter being congratulated by Lois for, cheering up Meg, reveals well, that's why I have this #1 dad t-shirt. And then he also accidentally reveals his No Fat Chicks t-shirt.
Which is random.
Again, just throwing every joke at the wall they possibly can. We get Stewie's origin story with a Star Wars-like battle as a sperm, only to reveal that it was a trap in this, quote, uterine gulag.
Dude, yeah, the dialogue for Stewie in this whole sequence is just brilliant. Like he's, they've established he is clearly the smartest one with the most vast vocabulary, and yeah, they just hammer that home. It's an excellently animated and very well written, cutaway.
Stewie deduces that, well, as I was born, I was ambushed by the man in white. And Stewie deduces that I'm going to be sent back to the womb.
And as smart as he is, he still knows nothing of the world. That's such a cool dynamic. Like, has that even ever been done? Like that, it's honestly, I'm just amazed. Like it's funny, but like I'm honestly just like amazed by it. They do such a good job of like when they anthropomorphize things like a baby. That's I don't know. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but obviously he's an evil genius. But then at the same time, he's still a baby. And they do that with Brian a lot too, where especially later, they haven't quite done it yet, but like those moments where Brian is clearly intelligent, well-read, but he still acts like a dog at times. Like the barking at things, like chasing balls and stuff like that. Like when Peter gets a tennis ball out at some point, and those are just, I love when they do that because it's just, it adds to the absurdity where you anthropomorphize these things, made them seem like something that they're not, and then you remind everyone, yeah, they're still babies or a dog. It's a good tool.
Meg's at school, where she gets laughed at by cheerleaders, but is then met by Jennifer, who introduces herself to Meg. More on Jennifer later.
And her
Peter
eyes.
and Chris head to Cheesie Charlie's to scout it out, where Peter cannot avoid the temptation of the ball pit and Hong Kong Phooey belly flops into the ball pit.
Good God, ball pits, man. I loved those things as a kid. They have to be one of the most filthiest places on the planet.
Like as a kid, you could play in a ball pit and it's like, whatever, I'm used to the germs, that's fine. I feel like as an adult, if you were to like step foot in a ball pit, you'd be sick for a week.
Yeah.
Just the germ buildup, I just feel like you wouldn't be able to fight it off, basically.
Yeah, kids are fucking nasty. I said it.
Tell us how you really feel, man. Oh, damn. Shout out to, did you ever see episodes of Hong Kong Phooey, by the way?
No, I had no clue what Hong Kong Phooey was.
Okay. Hanna-Barbera cartoon as well, which again is funny based off of the Seth Green experience at Hanna-Barbera.
Seth MacFarlane, but yes.
Oh, did I say Seth Green?
Yes, you did.
Fair enough.
That's okay.
There's so many Seths.
Yeah.
Basically the whole thing was that it was a dog who was working at the police station as I think he was working as a janitor at the police station, but essentially whenever something would happen, he'd put on a karate gi and like a little mask and just go out and kick the shit out of people. It's, there's not enough crime fighting dogs,
Apparently not, yeah.
It's just not enough. You can never have enough crime fighting dogs. You have Peter and Chris then going and playing games at the arcade, including Chris playing the Indy 500 game while Peter next to him is playing Virtual Stuck Behind a Bus.
It's just the absurdity.
It raised the question to me of, that has to actually exist now. In this era of, truck simulators and all of that, that has to exist, right? This style of game where it's just, you're stuck behind.
We have Goat Simulator, so nothing would surprise me.
It reminds me of that game. God, what was the name of it? I can't even think of who the hell produced it at this point. Famous. Again, the name's right there for me. Famous magicians. Penn and Teller. There we go. I got there. They were a part of a video game. It was technically unreleased, but it was a video game called Desert Bus. And that's kind of what this made me think of, where it's just the absurdity of it. Where in this game, you had to drive a bus on a straight road between Tucson, Arizona, and Las Vegas.
Oh, God.
There are no other vehicles. You are just driving through the desert. You can open the doors at bus stops, but nobody will get on. You can travel at a top speed of 45 miles an hour over the course of 360 miles, meaning it takes you 8 hours to get to your end destination. But here's the thing. It is 8 hours of real time.
That sounds awful.
You can't skip ahead. You can't up the speed. You literally just have to sit there and watch the bus go for 8 hours to beat the level. It was a part of a Sega CD game, or it was canceled, but it was supposed to be a mini game compilation starring Penn and Teller, and that's easily the most famous one that is out there. Is Desert Bus.
Jesus, that sounds horrible.
And I'm like, well, if that existed in the 90s, then virtual stuck behind a bus must absolutely exist somewhere. Especially, too, people have made video games of fake video games in shows like this. Like, they've done it for The Simpsons and stuff like that. So I'm like, this has to exist somewhere. At least I hope it does. Fair enough.
Oh, I thought you found it. I was ready for the big reveal. Damn it.
Oh, I wish. Man, I hope it exists. And if it does, someone please send it my way. Or send if you find it, feel free. Peter goes,
oh my God.
Does it exist?
I just found a post on Reddit that said, I made the Family Guy game virtual stuck behind a bus.
Of course.
And it has a link. It has a link to the Google store. There's no way. Hold on. Oh my God. It looks like it is a thing.
Virtual stuck behind a bus. Wow, it's from a post. I found that post too. It's from a year ago.
I mean, yeah, it looks like an app game or something like that. And oh, it has 10 or more downloads. So not very, but someone made it. I mean, that's just what a time we live in when programming is at probably an all-time high and people just can make memes, meme games.
I'm happy. I'm glad that exists. It should. Peter's trying to cheat at a claw machine by reaching up into it, but he loses his Dukes of Hazzard watch while trying to cheat. Meanwhile, Chris runs out of the bathroom and celebrates after winning a condom.
Which he calls a balloon. And why the fuck are condoms at a children's like? Like, there's so many questions. It is That's like jokes within jokes.
That whole deal, though, of like, oh yeah, you can buy condoms in the bathroom. Like the last time I saw that, I was at Heathrow Airport. On the way, so seriously, yeah, on the way home from Finland last time, this past June.
That makes sense.
We landed at Heathrow, and it's just this big ass machine of like, buy the condoms you want. I'm just like, at an airport?
If you're in Europe, they're kind of everywhere. I remember the first time, and I was there for my first time in Europe. I was like 14 years old. And it was for like a school band trip, and we were doing a tour there in Europe. And I was in Germany, and I bought a fucking condom because I could, like with like a euro coin or something like that. And you just buy a condom, and yeah, you'll find them in Europe. You will not find them in the States. I would be shocked to find them in the States because the States are just repressed. It's hard enough to get friggin' feminine hygiene products put in bathrooms, like. Condoms, oh my God.
I mean, hey, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying at an airport, caught me a little bit off guard. It's like, well, you see, I forgot them at home and we're almost to Italy. So might as well prep now. Like, I don't know. I did see a funny note, though, the Dukes of Hazzard watch. So a kid comes along and wins the watch, but they had a voiceover of the watch, like it would play a sound effect, and it was actually Waylon Jennings that did the voiceover, just like he did for the actual Dukes of Hazzard TV show, which I thought was really cool that they were able to get him to do that. You know, from like day, Because I feel like with a lot of shows, and especially celebrity involvement, you wait until it's a hit. But no, third episode of Family Guy. Hey, we're gonna do a Dukes of Hazzard joke. Sure, yeah. Waylon's down to do it. Why not?
And then he comes back at least one more time in a future episode as well to do narration.
So, in the midst of all of this, Peter accidentally talks himself out of Cheesie Charlie's hosting Stewie's birthday party, in which Peter preps Chris for being the man of the house because Lois is going to absolutely kill Peter. We cut away to Stewie, who is reading Soldier of Fortune magazine and begins to pack for his war against the Man in White, which includes a box of grenades and, of course, travel Cheerios.
Yeah. Little baggie of Cheerios. That's honestly an elite fucking baby snack. The videos I have of me being a baby, and in one of those little walker things that they sit the baby down in one of those things that has a little tray.
Yeah.
And yeah. I always had any baby picture I see or video I'm in as a baby, there's always a fucking mess of Cheerios on there. Like, apparently I loved Cheerios.
I still love Cheerios. I had a bowl of Cheerios today.
Nice.
I got
Honey Nut Cheerios. That's what I got.
I'm a big cereal guy, but I'm also a big old person cereal guy. I enjoy Cheerios. I enjoy.
I love Total.
I haven't tried Total in a while, but
I don't think I've ever had it.
Give me Honey Bunches of Oats. Give me Life or Chex, and especially Raisin Bran. You beat me to the punch on the Total joke. Goodness. So Peter gets home and tells Lois as Brian pulls up a chair to listen to Peter's story about how they lost the reservation at Cheesie Charlie's. As it cuts away to this fictional scenario, Peter is now wearing his I Heart Lois t-shirt, which I thought was a nice touch. As Peter and Chris head into the evil castle known as Cheesie Charlie's, where the devil is hosting, as he salutes Hitler.
Oh my God.
You see kids getting killed, as the devil notes that they have 3 flavors of ice cream available for the party: vanilla, chocolate, or people.
Yeah, very good. Also in the background, I counted at least one. There were probably more. But it stuck out to me because they do this reference actually a few different times. It was from Edgar Allan Poe's, that pendulum. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Did you read much Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the pendulum story, how it just keeps getting lower and lower. Yeah, they had a reference to that. It's just a background reference, not mentioned. But yeah, that also comes up in a future episode of the Griffin family being tortured. And I just, again, just shows Seth MacFarlane, everyone's appreciation for like older literature, older movies, older, the classics. And that's just there's pop culture references, but there's always going to be those old classic references in Family Guy.
Right. Eventually, Chris and Peter are captured, but Peter turns into the Hulk to save the day. As Lois cuts him off, Brian gives him a standing ovation and calls him the Spalding Gray of crap.
Dude, did you by chance look up Spalding Gray?
I sure did.
Oh yeah, I did a lot of homework. Yeah, they make a point to make a lot of Rhode Island references because he was an actor, playwright, a screenwriter, novelist born in Rhode Island. Tragically suffered a TBI, traumatic brain injury, from a car crash, and later took his own life due to it. But this reference was made a few years before that, so it wasn't really in bad taste or anything like that. But yeah, he was just involved in so many crazy movies and shows and stuff like that. He has quite the resume.
Yeah, I was looking over that. There's a lot of different acting credits in the variety of different films. It was just something I had no idea who this was. There aren't too many references, even some of the older references I feel like that go past me, but this was an episode that was a little bit different, whether or not it be, granted, not within the episode itself, but we talked about the writer and the director and some of the things that they've worked on. But then you also had a joke like this where I'm just like, I don't get it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of like what I think Seth MacFarlane has called like 10%ers, where like 10% of people are going to get it. But if they get it, then they really like it. And Seth, they love doing stuff like that because I don't know. That's just part of what this show is. And again, what makes it so special, because when you get one of those references that you'll know most people won't get to because it's more obscure, like you feel even cooler.
So Lois, as you would expect, is furious. Meanwhile, we see Stewie escaping from his bedroom via the use of suction cups. Peter eventually tries to save the day by hosting the party at home, lying to Lois about what he has organized. Brian calls him out, knowing that he doesn't have this, calling him a terrible liar, as we get a cutaway gag of Peter and one other guy in an elevator, in which Peter farts and tries to blame it on the other dude.
Yep.
Brian abruptly leaves the conversation to try and catch a reference again that I didn't get at first.
Oh, you never saw those commercials?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought at first that it was an Indian in the cupboard reference. But I discovered it was a reference to commercials from the 70s for Purina dog food.
It's a weird, bizarre commercial that it's just so weird that it always stood out.
Yeah, so within the 70s and the 80s, and by the way, this also got a video game.
Oh my
because
God,
of course it did. There's a 1983 promotional video game called Chase the Chuck Wagon. It was only available via mail order by sending in proofs of purchase for Purina dog food. Which
came on a floppy disk, didn't it?
I think so. No, it was actually for the Atari 2600.
Ah, okay.
But I do like it. It's basically Pac-Man, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're trying to chase things down. Like there's a bone that you have to chase down, but you're also being like chased by a dog catcher or something at the same time. But
a lot of video games back then were like knockoffs of other ones. They hadn't, because you're so limited back then. Like, what the hell could you do?
I was like, when I learned this game exists, I'm like, this must have come with like packed into a box of cereal or something like that, because I do remember a lot of those style of games. But this was even before that, mail order only. Stewie heads to the airport, trying to fly to Nicaragua, where he gives the woman at the counter a list of demands, including there better not be pickles. God forbid there's pickles.
Yep.
He gets caught and offers, I wrote down the wrong thing here, but offers the security guard money, women, men, to let him go. We cut back to Peter, who is trying to catch the 3 little pigs for the petting zoo that he promised. Knocking down the first 2 houses, getting to the brick house, only to get paint canned like it's Home Alone.
Yeah,
which I thought was tremendous.
Yeah, that's again just another reference, and it's such a little one too. But if you know, you know.
Meg brings her new friend Jennifer back to the Griffin home, where Jen compares Lois to Martha Stewart, where Lois says, "Actually, I'm really nice."
That is a tremendous.
I didn't realize that Martha Stewart would have been joked about like this prior to her going to prison.
Yeah, she was at times viewed as not so nice of a person behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Or they just
I had no
took
idea.
a shot. Yeah. Because it's Family Guy. They just sometimes just take shots at anyone just cause. But for some reason, I remember that. I didn't look into this too deeply, but yeah, for some reason, I remember Martha Stewart was like It's always controversial when someone plays an uber nice person and then turn out to be opposite way. The same way it's like this really awesome, discovery when like a person who plays a dickbag in some way, like Gordon Ramsay, who's actually this super nice person.
Right.
And when you see him work with kids, you're like, oh my God. Like, yeah.
I love those memes of him just yelling at a 35-year-old.
It's okay, gorgeous. You donkey.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Meg informs Lois that she got invited to a party by Jennifer, but Lois doesn't want her to go as it's the same day as Stewie's birthday party. Meg storms out of the room, to which Brian, who's been sitting at the table with Lois, mutters, "She's a whiny little runt, isn't she?" Lois is shocked. He just goes, "What? I said runt." Third episode, they make a joke like this. It really is like Seth MacFarlane was like, I'm just putting it all out there.
Yeah.
Like season 1 has that air of, man, if they don't give me a second season, at least I made the jokes I wanted to make.
Yes. And it was just this don't give a fuck attitude, which is perfect. And goddamn, yeah, like and like, I think part of it is, you be controversial to be shocking, but at the same time, that's also just who he is. And the great kind of writers like this and stuff have always sort of pushed buttons. Great, because you think of the iconic comedians like George Carlin. They honestly, genuinely didn't give a fuck. And they were just speaking of, like, I don't care what you think. I think that rule's stupid, so I'm going to bend it as much as I can.
I mean, literally, like maybe his most famous comedy special ever is the things you can't say on television, basically.
Yep.
Peter heads to the exotic entertainment store, where we get the first introduction of, at the time, was the "oh no" guy, aka
the name was the performance artist.
Was it? Is that how he was titled
before it became Bruce? I think his name is Bruce down the line. But yeah, his character name at the time was the performance artist because of what he's talking about. I catch little kids on my web. Like
Peter just backs out of the room. They had him doing so many different odd jobs, especially. And late, in future seasons, like 1 and 2, I don't know how much. I think this was only one of 2 appearances in like the first 2 seasons or something like that. It's not until I think season 4 or 5 that he starts.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if his second appearance was like running whatever meeting that was. I can't even remember what the meeting was, but when he has Oreos and coffee, everyone likes a snack. Like, I don't even know if that's the second one, but yeah, he was just always doing these weird, different roles in the community.
We cut to Stewie at the airport, who chastises the security guard, saying, "The only way you're going to get me to talk is if you torture me, and I don't think you've got the grapes." Which, that got me. That got me big time. And we get the first acknowledgement of Stewie's middle name. Stuart Gilligan Griffin.
I think that's the first family member middle name that we know about. We learn of others later, Chris's middle name, and that's the only one I'm remembering offhand. I'm pretty sure we'll learn Peter's at some point, but I always remember Chris's middle name because it's hilarious.
Do we want to tell people what it is in case they don't know?
Yeah, it's Cross.
Christopher Cross Griffin.
Yeah, Chris Cross. Oh my God.
Stewie escapes the airport security guard by freezing him in carbonite. Star Wars reference you were alluding to earlier. And not the last time we will see someone frozen in carbonite.
Definitely not.
And
show. Yeah, we actually passed it. I was trying to remember which scene it was, but I think it's when Peter comes in to explain about Cheesie Charlie's. Brian is reading a magazine titled Doggy Style, but it's about dog fashion. Which I just had to. I laughed so hard at that. Visual gags, background gags. Some of my like favorite sort of things. Probably why I love Airplane and Hot Shots so much. But I think that also helped shape my humor towards Family Guy too, just because absurdity. Anyway, had to bring that up because goddamn.
Brian quotes to Peter, who is now pretty dejected after his plans don't come to fruition. Maybe my favorite line of the episode, saying, "If you're going to pull a party out of your ass, you better stand up." Meg steps outside, or at least pokes her head out the front door to ask Peter if she can go to this party. Peter asks, "Did you ask your mother?" To which Meg says, "Yes." And then Peter's like, "All right, go have fun." You at least talk to your mom about it. It doesn't matter what she said. You talk to her about it.
Yeah.
Peter mentions to Brian that the only thing he's really gotten is a literal big ass pinata. To which Brian quotes, "I sure hope candy comes out of that." This was a good episode. This was the best, the first good episode for Brian. He had some quips in the first two. I feel like he got a lot more spotlight in episode 3.
He absolutely did.
Peter, again dejected, states, "Well, I'm a bad father, a lousy husband, and a snappy dresser."
Just completely random.
He finally comes up with a plan as he reroutes a circus parade to the Griffin home and arrives in the backyard yelling to Lois, "Hey, look, I'm the two symbols of the Republican Party, an elephant and a big fat white guy who is threatened by change."
Oh my God. It's kind of messed up how true that is still.
Yeah, 25 years later, here we are. It's
I like how he reroutes the parade as well. Like, you think he's just gonna change the sign, because he does, and he just fucking knocks the parade leader out cold with it. Oh. Good job pointing one way and just going absurd with it again.
I love the idea too of the cartoonishly quick fashion change to put on the suit. Number one, the guy that he knocks out is like half the size of him, but the suit fits perfect. We cut away to Stewie, who is practicing his martial.
How do the fucking disguises always fit?
Oh God. Stewie's practicing his martial arts, complete with bottle nunchucks. Good weapon. And we cut to the party that Meg went to as Jennifer poisons the punch with arsenic and a Paul Reiser book.
This is the first of quite a few shots at Paul Reiser as well, which is, I guess Seth didn't much like his brand of comedy.
Outside of like Beverly Hills Cop, which I haven't watched in a while, I wasn't as familiar with Paul Reiser up until he started appearing in Stranger Things. I can only be honest. And Aliens too, I suppose. But I was very confused as to like, why the shot at Paul Reiser? But it's one of those things about Family Guy where it's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
You know, it could have been the same thing about Martha Stewart. Like, maybe there were stories at the time of her maybe not being a not so nice person, or maybe it was just like, well, she's nice, so fuck her.
Yeah.
Let's just say she's a jerk.
It's like, you can, so why not? Yeah.
And of course, you know, this group that Meg finds herself suddenly a part of, this first reference, of course, of spiking the punch is a reference to the People's Temple cult.
Yeah.
AKA the Jim Jones cult and the Jonestown massacre, basically, even though it was, well, I mean, I guess you can call it a massacre. I mean, not everybody committed suicide there, but
no, but even the people who did, they're in a cult, like they're not in their right mind, manipulated, and
that whole, like, I've watched a lot about the whole People's Temple thing. And that's still one of those stories to me where I'm just like, Jesus Christ. It's just in terms of how that all played out And I mean, you're talking about this ended up in the death of a congressman, 900 people. I believe it was the like single greatest loss of like American life up until 9/11, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and again, this happened in the 70s. Like, to me, it's just it's still one of the most wild stories out there, and we're not even 50 years removed from it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
People
know.
still think that they're immune to brainwashing and propaganda, which is fucking hilarious. Like, after we just saw it, like, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's the same as everything. Like, oh, cancer can't happen to me. This can't happen to me. I'm above this. And we have a weird sense of immortality, even though we shouldn't. And that is, one of the biggest examples of just how ugly that shit is, and how not easy, but you have to be careful who you follow, because, you know, you get certain charisma in a certain way with manipulating people, buying it, you know, preying on their fears, essentially. And again, we still see a lot of that to this day on grander scales as well, not with, you know, mass suicides and stuff, but it's on very large scales of, you know, call them populists, call them whatever, of just people who with blind, like absolutely blind followers who think that person can do no wrong. And it's pretty scary how little we've learned.
Makes me think of a certain bald man in Europe. We cut back to Stewie talking to Chris about the party, and Stewie threatening to kill Chris for every sprinkle he finds. We got a cutaway gag as Jesus is at a party and turns water into funk, which I wonder how many appearances Jesus is up to now throughout the history of Family Guy, because
like from conception to now, dude, present day, it's got to be so many, because he's there quite a bit.
Yeah. We cut back to Meg at the party, who has a crush on a guy, but she learns that all of the men have been castrated. Which, you know, a good amount of this as well isn't just the Jonestown reference to this, but you also get the mixture of Heaven's Gate and that whole cult as well, in which case, yes, a lot of the men were willingly castrated at that point. This was, I mean, again, this is the other whole joke. It's just like, hey, let's joke about Heaven's Gate, which was also in the fucking 70s and everything, which is nuts.
Yeah, what the hell?
But essentially, how to explain this? A man and his wife, really up until the 90s, actually. This ended a few years before. How the fuck do you even describe this? This was even more bizarre. Basically, it's characterized as a UFO religion. The central belief of the group was that the followers could transform themselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings by rejecting their human nature, and that they would ascend to heaven, referred to as the next level or the evolutionary level above human. And it led to another mass suicide, in which, you know, this one's famous for the jumpsuits and the white sneakers and just fucking weird.
Yeah, it's crazy that they both happened in the 70s, where then in the 60s there was large amounts of LSD going around.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, with the Heaven's Gate group, like, it started in the 70s, but the mass suicide wasn't until like 96 or 97.
That's so crazy.
But you're right in that you wouldn't be surprised to be like, okay, when this dude and his wife in the mid 70s are just like, yeah, this is the thing. The drugs you were on to fry your brain and convince yourself of that. and to just be like, I'm a mystic who knows better. Like, just, and like you said, like the idea of they ended up with quite a few followers, you know, in the end, in terms of the mass suicide, it was 39 people. Again, you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. That's the only thing I can say. Brian's at the party for Stewie, where he gets seltzer from a clown and mentions needing to find a midget with some gin to complete his drink. While Peter is trying to find Lois to help him get a literal monkey off of his back. We cut away to Stewie, who is trying to recruit other babies for his fight against the man in white. Although Stewie, just to remind you that he is a baby, soils himself. We cut back to Meg, who gets officially recruited by the leader of the cult as the Kool-Aid is passed out. Peter, though, shows up to try and get Meg back to Stewie's party, where Meg quotes, "I'm so embarrassed I could die." And a dude in the background shouts, "Hey, not before the rest of us." Peter finally learns his lesson that Stewie's birthday is more about Lois than anyone else. There's another reference where it's stated that Meg isn't worse than the fat girl from the Judds.
Had to look that up.
I did too. And it is in reference to Winona Judd, Judd, who is a country music singer that was a part of the Judds with her mom as a country music duo. Still touring today, I believe. Miss Winona Judd, also known as just Winona. I still have to go back and listen to her biggest hits to see if I recognize any of them.
Yeah, so would I. Because I don't recognize any by title.
Yeah, She Is His Only Need, I Saw the Light, and No One Else on Earth all reached #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot Country charts in the mid-90s. So, poor Winona Judd also catching strays here in this episode.
No one is safe.
As Peter and Meg look to leave, the group drops dead. To which Peter quotes, "People wanted to fake their own death instead of going to the party." The leader, though, of course, chases after Meg and Peter as to not look like a lone nut for trying to transcend on his own.
Yeah, because when you're in a group, it's all okay. Peer pressure works. Herd mentality. But we're smarter than animals, don't worry.
Yeah.
I do like him having to grab that ceremonial white robe and making a big thing out of it, so you get that you know where it's going. I always kind of like it's not so much foreshadowing, it's just slapping you in the face with it, but it's good because you know where the joke is going and you're just excited to see it.
Peter and Meg finally arrive at the party. Peter stopped to get a cake with a naked man on it. It was one of two cakes. At least it's not the one with Al Roker and the Hershey Kiss nipples.
Al Roker catching strays now.
Strays.
Oh, man.
This was at the time, too, that Al Roker was a bigger guy at the time.
Yeah.
You know, he underwent a pretty significant weight loss in the subsequent years after this, but yeah, Al Roker catching strays, but not the fat joke. No. That was saved from Winona Judd.
Yeah.
Go figure. The leader shows up at the Griffin's house as the man in white, as Stewie taunts him and ultimately shoots him, proclaiming, "It's a boy." Stewie.
I tried to think if that whole scene was a reference to something, but I think it's just an overall reference to like the way horror movies are shot and and like thrillers and things like that. And it was all very filled with cliches. You hear a voice and then it's coming from a recorder and the mirror thing. And yeah, it's, I think they just hit all the cliches on the head with that one. I could not think of any specific movie or anything.
Right. Stewie bursts out of the Griffin home proclaiming victory is mine. I think it was Chris who then says, and so is this cake.
No, it was Lois, yeah.
Was it Lois?
Yeah, it was Lois. And then again, this starts the confusion. What the hell? Can they understand what he's saying or not?
Exactly. Like she hears him say this, but all the other stuff about everything else. And then there was episode 1 where he's like, and you can go to hell. And it's like, yeah, you know, no dessert for you.
Yeah. You're clearly grumpy. Yeah.
Stewie thinks about what he wants to wish for as he thinks internally to the sound of bombs being dropped.
And jackboots marching.
But ultimately decides on a disco party as the episode comes to a close.
Yeah, I gotta say, the 2 disco party references were not my favorite things of all time.
That's like, fair.
It's not strong. It's I guess it's kind of weird, but yeah, and it wasn't a strong ending or a strong use of Jesus, I feel like. But they get much better with their uses of Jesus.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you know, the climax of it is basically, he finally, you know, catches the man in white. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at the end of it, it's like, how do we end this? Absurdity. Let's just end it in absurdity, which is a go-to, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
then they get even more absurd with Jesus too, which is one of my favorite parts of that, dude.
Yep. He's magic. Yeah. Episode 3, Chitty Chitty Death Bang. For me, I'm hovering between a 3 and maybe a 4. I know you said a 4. Would I call this episode better than episode 2? For me, it's close. There are aspects of both that I feel like are strong, but both have their weak points as well. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say it's a below average episode or even drifting towards like bad territory.
Yeah,
it's a solid episode, but to your point as well, I feel like we're still, you know, finding our groove after the really strong debut.
Yes, but yeah, they're still, and yeah, it's just part. I mean, it's good to lead with the very strong one. Yeah, the second one, it's still good, and I just thought this one had a slight edge, mostly because of the B story, Stewie's B story in this one, I feel like was a little bit better. Like, you know, when you think about, you know, the whole his flashback to how he became encased in the womb and the dialogue through that, and then the whole story leading up to how he gets the man in white. I think from not just from the humor perspective, just for me, it's from the whole story and writing and production perspective for sure that I have to. But yeah, I'd agree. I think, you know, 1 to 5, it's tough. I need an in between. So yeah, I'm kind of still between. I would give it like a 3.5, or I'd give the last episode a 3. But it's for me, it's kind of close to a 4 though. Yeah, it's hard. I get so indecisive when it comes to rating things because I try to be way too precise with it. And I just talk myself into corners or in circles.
We could even go to like a 1 through 3. 2 is good. 3 is great. A 1 is eh.
Yeah.
You know, just to concise our scale a little bit. But
and then I'll still be upset because I'm like, well, this one was, you know, I'd call it a 2, but it's better than this 2. Like, that's exactly how my brain goes.
Yeah. Well, that is it for episode 3. Next time up, it is episode 4 of season 1, Mind Over Murder, where Peter is placed under house arrest and decides to open his own bar in the family basement.
Yeah, this is a good one. I know. Yeah.
This is a good one.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I have high hopes for this. I haven't seen this episode in a while, but I do have very, very high hopes for this one.
Yeah, I have very fond memories.
So with that, everybody, we will bid you... We will bid you adieu for this time. Until next time, you can catch Sin on Twitter at CYNFTWProd. That's Sin FTW Prod. And you can catch me on the Twitter side of things at Toogie24, TOUGIE 24. Until then, thank you for watching and or listening. We'll see you next time. Sin, the final word goes to you. What is it?
Football!